Another response video to Joe. This one might get a little bit tedious, but let's see what happens. So Joe, you're just back to the same stuff. You know, this idea that I have to look at your website, you don't have to look at mine. I'm going to post a link to the first video. Kind of answers the question, where does money come from? But look, I don't disagree with you that the way the banking system is engineered, there's this huge opportunity for profiting. But let's also recognize that people are buying with trillions of dollars, 30-year bonds at pretty low interest rates. So obviously, if the banking game was such a sure thing and it was such a, just an incredible money maker compared to everything else out there, everybody'd be in that game. And so sort of my point is even without fractional reserve banking, it's a it's an equity economy. Okay, if you have equity, you can play the system as long as you're going to allow people to borrow. And if you don't allow them to borrow, then I guess it's a renter's world, because this is the problem I keep going back to, is that the problem isn't the banking system. The problem is that we don't tax income from equity at the same rate we tax income from work. Okay, I mean, not only is the rate not the same, but obviously a worker has personal expenses. He has depreciation sort of built into him. He's got to eat and breathe and drink and do all these other things that are expensive. And a big pile of money doesn't have to do any of that. Okay, so any income it derives is free money in the sense that there's no depreciation. And so if we're going to tax income from equity at a lower rate than you're going to tax work, then over time the rich are going to get richer and the workers are going to get poorer. And that's the root of this problem. And I'd go a step further, that the real root is the head start that we give the owners of equity, because they can, once they have equity, they have it perpetually. There's no having to earn it or re-earn it. It just grows and grows and grows and grows, and it goes on and on and on, and just kind of spreads through that genetic pool, and that creates an ownership society, a society where there's owners and everybody else is a peasant. It creates a monarchy. It's what civilization is. It's the wall civilization has crashed into throughout all of recorded history. That's where free markets go. We haven't had unfree markets, and we see what happened in the past, and we see what's happening now, and that's the nature of it. All right, so let's just go through this. Let's say you did abolish fractional reserve banking. Here's the scenario. There's probably a flaw in it somewhere, but let's just go through it. That sort of parallels what goes on with fractional reserve banking. So let's just say I got some cash. I earned it, saved it. So I go out and I buy a house, all right? And then I rent that house to somebody, all right? So now I'm getting income from the renter, and I have the equity of the house itself. So now I go to someone, doesn't matter, whatever, some entity that has cash, and I say, look, I'll give you a couple % on your cash if, you give me your cash. Okay? Because I know what to do with it, and you don't. And I'll give you as collateral my equity in my house. Okay? I own this house. So, your money's kind of guaranteed. So you give me the money at a low interest rate, all right? And I'm going to go out and make some more money with that money, because I'm going to buy another house. Okay? So I go out and I make the deal, I buy another house. All right? Now, if the markets are working, my first house is already appreciated in value. I'm getting income rent from it. And now I got another house that I can rent, okay, that I own outright, except I own it through somebody else's cash, okay, and I have to pay him back. But it's at a lower percentage than the money I'm making on my rental, plus the appreciation in the value of the house. So then I go out and do the same exact thing. I find another guy, he'll give me another 200 grand or whatever the price is for the house, and I tell him that I'll give you this much in return, and here's your guarantee that you can have the property if something happens and I can't pay. So you're collateralized, you got guaranteed money, and I'll give you an income. Okay, but I'm going to make more because I'm going to rent the house again. So you can see it's sort of like fractional reserve banking in the sense that you take the same equity, you keep making trades, and that's all fractional reserve banking is that you make the first trade. The first trade is, let's say it's a mortgage. Okay, so you go out, the bank pays for the house, half the house, 3/4 of the house. So it gets back. So for the money it put out, let's say it put out $100,000 on a $130,000 house. So it keeps the $30,000 down payment theoretically, plus it has the equity in the house, which is $130,000. So now it has $160,000, and it only put out $100. Okay, so it's already made $60,000 theoretically on the deal. Plus, it's got an IOU with a guy who's going to be paying them 7% a year to pay off that $100,000. So that's a pretty good deal. But the point is now the bank has some cash it got back, so it didn't lose all of the cash it had, but it's got this house thing. And you're theoretically saying, well, now a house isn't anything. So it's got to wait now until the house is converted into cash by the guy paying it over 30 years. So it's got to wait 30 years before it gets its equity back so it can reloan that money. And fractional reserve banking basically says, no, you've got the equity, you've got the house in the bank, go ahead, loan the house to buy another house. Essentially, it's just saying, let's convert the house into cash. So the government backs up the house and says, here's the cash. Go ahead, loan it again because you have the assets to cover it. You have equity. And so we'll give you money for equity. And that's what it comes down to. So I agree with you that there's a corruption in this system in the sense that you're loaning the same money more than once in a way. Very practically. But the problem is that's what the whole system is made out of. That's what every part of our economy is doing right now, is they're loaning money, the same collateral is the collateral for more than one loan, as weird as that sounds. I mean, technically it's not, but it is. I mean, but everything's getting guaranteed in the sense that it only works as long as nothing depreciates in value. As long as nothing bubbles, it works. But as soon as something crashes, as soon as something bubbles, then it's all crash. It's just completely destroyed. And so that's why it becomes completely dependent on growth. And obviously that's unsustainable over time, so there has to be something built into it, something called insurance, to protect against the default, the crash. And the insurance, apparently, is the federal government, which is bullshit. So, I mean, I agree with you that kind of banking has a danger in it. But the danger is the fact that the equity keeps increasing in value. The danger is the fact of the inflation in the first place. So if the equity wasn't so vulnerable, if everything wasn't an investment property, okay, an investment period, if all equity wasn't investment capital theoretically, then you wouldn't have this problem as dramatic. But the bottom line still remains that equity is going to be valuable. I mean, if you own something, that ownership's going to have value. And people are going to use that value to their advantage because everybody has the expectation that their surplus grows. Nobody thinks like, oh, I have $60,000 in the bank, it should stay being $60,000 next year and the next year and the next year and the next year. Everybody thinks that if they have money in the bank, it should be making them money. And it's that is the corruption. The idea of interest on your surplus is the part that doesn't make any sense, because that obligates, in theory, that commodities like a silo of wheat should somehow sit in a silo and increase by 10%. Or if I have oil in the ground, that oil should somehow increase in volume, magically, all by itself. But that becomes the expectation. As long as that's people's expectation, they're going to keep manipulating the system to make it real. And when it's made real, the rich will get richer and the workers will get poorer, because we don't have a tax structure that makes anything else possible. So I say fix the taxes first. Unlike Ron Paul, you don't get rid of the income tax. No way. You increase the income tax and you get rid of the other crappy taxes. You get rid of the taxes on things like cigarettes. So anyway, yeah. So I don't know where we go from here in this conversation. I mean, if you eliminate fractional reserve banking, you will increase how much it costs to borrow money. That's a fact, because now they won't be able to lend the same equity to more than they won't allow the same equity won't be able to finance more than one loan. And so in that circumstance, it's automatic that interest rates will increase, and so anybody